Okay, we're back. I haven't gotten the water yet, but I did some other things. Got some other things prepared and whatnot. So we're going to move on. I only have 25% battery left, and that's going to go pretty quickly. Guess I won't be playing any video games today. Maybe I'll leave for work early. But here we go. Without further ado, being that we are short on resources. Hey, I'm sure I'm probably one of the most unkept YouTubers trying to make a thing here, but what are you gonna do? I don't own a mirror in here or plumbing or anything, so I'm just going to be a mess, and that's my life. So welcome back to Catalyst by Lisa Beeson. Chapter 32. In the abyss of oblivion, there was a familiar blue glass door. Ari raced towards it and burst through the doorway to the field of impossibly green grass, filled with colorful wildflowers on the other side. Absalom! She cried out in anguish and despair. She needed help. Pardon me. She needed absolution. He was beside her in an instant, and she fell into his arms weeping, hopeless, broken, and utterly depleted. I'm here. I'm here, little one. I'm here. He crooned to her. They both fell to their knees in the tall grass, and Absalom rocked her gently in his arms. It seemed as though he held her for a small eternity, enveloping her in calmness and peace as the fireflies and stars moved around them. There was no judgment or rejection in him. She knew from some place deep down within that her pain was his pain, that he hurt because she was hurting. Somehow Absalom, who she now knew was the Shazamin of her memories, was intrinsically connected to her. I failed, Absalom. I failed everything, she breathed out. No, you haven't. I have, Ari insisted, drawing away from him. I was weak and gave in to temptation. I took, even though I swore time and time again that I never would. I'm nothing but a monster now. I'm consumed by the darkness that made the shades what they were. I need to be destroyed, she left unspoken. Absalom looked at her with his distinctive silver mercurial eyes, full of immense knowledge, empathy, and surprisingly, pride. He knew what it had cost her to do what she did. It is time I told you a story. He stood and took her hand to help her up. With the docile compliance, she let him lead her to the hill with the purple blossom tree that he had created the last time they were in the in-between. She now recognized it as a follow blossom tree. He had been subtly giving her clues to her past the whole time. She had just been too caught up in what she wanted him to tell her to see it for what it was. Damn flies. Oh, yeah. You must learn to listen with more than your ears, he said as though he had read her thoughts. What kind of story is this? She asked tonelessly. She didn't really think she was capable of handling parables or allegories at the moment. It is what it is. Take from it what you will, he said in that infuriatingly vague way of his, but she was too tired and weary to argue, so she let him lead her to a spot under the tree. As soon as they sat down on the incredibly soft grass, the scarlet bird she had created the last time she was here began to sing from its perch in the tree branches. It was the same sweet melody as before, but this time Ari recognized it as the lullaby that her mother had sung to her. "Be still and listen," Absalom told her, and she watched as he started to manipulate the world around them, making everything disappear except the hill they were sitting on. On a world still recovering from the ravages of interstellar war, back when the Anunnaki was uncorrupted and beginning to stretch out its fingers to explore the farthest corners of the universe, there was a young man on the cusp of maturity. As Absalom spoke, he weaved the world he was describing around them, making them unseen observers in the three-dimensional visual of his tale. Out of nothingness appeared a young Dyson man that looked no more than 18 or 19 years old, stretched out on a flat red stone above a canyon, looking dreamily up at an alien sky. He was the fourth son of a powerful overlord, and he was named Tor, in hopes that he would grow to be a mighty warrior like his ancestor of the same name. But as the boy grew, his father gave up such hopes, for unlike the other men of his people, though he was strong of body and mind, he sought not the glories of war and the domination over those weaker than himself. Rather, he was able to see the world not as something to be conquered and shaped according to his will, but as something to be cherished and cultivated into something better. He sought beauty and knowledge, while the others sought power and dominance. It was because of this difference in Tor that the servant woman, Kale, pregnant with his father's fifth child, came to him for help. Kale was not one of father's chosen wives, so the child she carried would be unwanted and deemed unworthy by his father, and would therefore be terminated. Dang raspy voice. Kale had always been kind towards Tor, more so than even his own mother, who saw him only as a disappointment. So Tor agreed to help her and his younger sibling in any way he could. With his great knowledge and cunning, he was able to disengage her servant Torque undetected, and had her smuggled to someplace safe, away from his father's tyranny. A short time later, Tor began his transition into adulthood, and in the throes of his metamorphosis, he felt his unborn sibling's need for him. The feeling was strange, but inescapable. So when he successfully passed through the change into adulthood, he spared no time in going to Calais. As part of his new adult abilities, he was granted the gift to see the sacred Shazah of all living things. When he finally made it to Calais, in the last stages of childbirth, he saw in an instant that his sibling would be different from all others. Even still inside his mother's womb, the child's Shazah was magnificently brighter than any other living being. Meeting Calais' frantic gaze, he could see that she knew it was as well. The child would be a Fluxai, and therefore must be destroyed. Banishing all others from the room, Calais grabbed Tor's hand and told him that during the child's gestation, she had been granted sight into the Athos. She begged him to take his sister far away, for the child must live. Tor hesitated. Though he felt the sacred ties of the blood bond, he could not make that promise. He'd read the old texts. The Fluxai were a danger to all. Untold power, volatile, unpredictable. Before he could respond, Calais threw back her head and screamed as the child made her way into this world. Fully emerged, Tor held his newly born sister in his arms, and he could not possibly deny her. He saw that she was pure and innocent. Everything good and beautiful in the universe was lying right there in his arms, inside that tiny infant. He knew in that instant that he would do anything for her. After granting Calais the chance to give a name and a parting embrace to her daughter, Tor disappeared into the night with his baby sister, leaving behind everything he knew to travel to distant worlds in search of safety. Though Kale had given the child her true name, Tor called his sister Utana, for it fit her. Tor proved to himself to be clever and resourceful, and he was able to protect his sister and evade all who would do them harm as they migrated from place to place. Despite their hardships, Utana bloomed in his care. He was father, mother, and brother to her as she grew from infancy to childhood, teaching and guiding her to the best of his ability. She was quick to learn and very intelligent. She never ceased to amaze him with her resiliency, bravery, and incredibly loving heart. She made Tor strive to be better, if only to be worthy of her. Their bond was incredibly strong. Quicker than Tor could have imagined, Utana had grown into an adolescent nearing maturity. The siblings had traveled to almost all of the established Anu settlements across the universe, never staying in one place for long. Of all the destinations they visited, there was one planet that stole Utana's heart. She fell in love with the world and its native people, seeing their merits when others only saw their inferiority. Tor cautioned her not to become too attached, to move on before she was found out. But she had already given up too much of herself to these beings. They loved, trusted, and worshipped her for what she was. She could not betray that and leave them unchampioned. They were hers. Tor's fears, however, were not unfounded. The Anunnaki was made aware of her existence, and they soon dispatched the Anasaru to find and destroy her before she reached maturity. Tor managed to get her away in time to hide in a cave system of a nearby mountain range, and Utana watched from a hidden opening in the mountain as the soldiers took out their wrath on her people in the valley below. Fraught with guilt, she refused to allow the slaughter to continue. She fought Tor in her efforts to get back to her people, but he finally managed to subdue her and convince her with the wisdom of his words to leave while they still could. She finally relented, but told them they should wait to leave until the next day. That night, she did not sleep. She sat on an outcropping overlooking the verdant valley and opened herself up to the Athos, divining the melodies of the great song to see what they held for her. Tor diligently watched over her until she finally bowed her head and turned back to look at him, the knowledge of the ages in her eyes. She came over to him and placed her hands on his face while she looked into his eyes, and she gave to him everything she had divined from the Athos. Images of past, present, and future flooded into his mind, and as she did this, she imbued him with the immense power of Urshaza, changing him elementally so his mind and body could handle and comprehend everything she was giving to him. When it was done, Tor opened his eyes to the daylight, streaming in through the mouth of the cave. She was gone. He ran to the outcropping to scan the valley for her, just in time to see the Anasaru soldiers execute her in front of her people. She had willingly given up her life to save theirs. Tor wanted to tear at the sky and level the mountains so this world would know his pain and loss. She was everything. She was meant to be everything, and they had killed her. But he stayed silent in his mourning, for he had made her a promise. She had shown him many things, and he now knew that this life had not been the time for her. She had shown him that she would not have survived the transition into maturity. He knew that the proper time would come, though, and he must prepare for a way for her to come back, to ensure that she would have everything else she would need to survive. Tor left his old life behind with his sister's corpse to start on the course of his new life. He had much to learn and much to prepare. As Absalom's story ended, the visions he created and much to prepare. As Absalom's story ended, the visions he created around them receded, and the in-between was as it was before. Arya had listened to the tale with more than her ears. The world Utana had fallen in love with had obviously been Earth. Her people were humans. The story mirrored what Jashar had told her of the Fluxai colonists they had worshipped. Arya turned to the ancient Shazamin beside her, looking past what he was now to the young... Ari turned to the ancient Shazamin beside her, looking past what he was now to the young Dyson man he had once been. In one of her memories, he had told her that he held on to life so that he could fulfill a promise. With her head full of questions and her heart pounding in her chest, she said, "Absalom, you said that Tor had called her Utana because it fit her. What does Utana mean?" A wistful longing flooded his eyes while he gathered up the purple petals around him and began rubbing them between his hands into a fine powder. "It means," he said, turning to her and meeting her gaze, "little one." Before she could respond, he blew the powder into her face, and the in-between vanished in a perfumed haze. And that was the end of chapter 32. Whoop, whoop. We're going to end here. I don't know how much space and battery I have left. So I'll just see you next time. I guess I have nothing to say about it except how exciting, right? Oh, vet's calling. Bye.